But I haven't come to Detroit today in a moment of triumph. No, I've come to Detroit today because our country is in a moment of crisis. A time when everything that generations of Detroit NAACP members have worked for is being systematically undermined by the folks in power in Washington. A man who calls African Americans thugs is now President of the United States. A man who embraces white supremacists is his senior advisor. And a man who was too racist to become a judge in the 1980s now runs the Department of Justice. Each and every one of you has seen the ugly reality of what happens when our government turns its back on millions of people. The people in this room know what is at stake. So I came to Detroit to say, the fight against racism and inequality and ugliness in all its forms is a righteous fight. I came to Detroit to say that I will be part of that fight. It's your fight. It's our fight. It is the fight of every single American who believes in justice and equality. It is a righteous fight. Look, I know you invited me to speak here tonight because I'm a United States Senator. A senator who Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell don't like very much. It's okay. But the truth is, I never thought in a million years I'd be a U.S. Senator. You know, I grew up in Oklahoma. My family didn't have much. My daddy moved from job to job. He sold fencing. He sold carpeting. He ended up as maintenance man. And after he had a heart attack, there was a long stretch with no money coming in, and the bills piled up. We lost our family station wagon. We were so close to losing our home that every night I listened to my mother cry. And finally, my mom, who was 50 years old, pulled on her best dress, put on her high heels, and walked to the Sears Roebuck. She kept body and soul together with a minimum wage job answering the phones. And I learned early on about the deep down fear that we could lose it all, and about how you fight back to take care of your family. All I ever wanted was to be a teacher. I loved my second grade teacher, and I hope we have a lot of teachers here tonight. Do we have a lot of teachers? There's a teacher. Thank you for all you do. You know, to be a teacher, though, you need to go to college. My parents didn't have money for that. And when they weren't looking, I applied for a debate scholarship. I was on the debate team in high school, and I got a scholarship, and off I went. But life is full of detours. I dropped out of school. I gave up the scholarship. I got married at 19. I was so smart. Maybe not, but I got a second chance. I went to a commuter college in Texas that cost $50 a semester, and I reached that dream of becoming a teacher. And once that door was open, other doors opened as well. I am the daughter of a janitor who became a professor at Harvard Law School and a United States Senator because America invested in educating our kids. I know the power of an open door. I know that power, but I am worried. I'm worried that instead of opening more doors, that America is closing doors. I'm worried that for too many of our kids, especially African American kids, those doors are locked tight. A lot of members of Congress, and I'm talking about both Republicans and Democrats, they say everything's okay in this country. There's plenty of opportunity out there. You know, people with power say we are a rich country, and they cite the statistics to say it's all roses, statistics that are true, but they have less and less to do with how most people live their lives every day. Powerful people see the roses, but they don't feel the thorns. A rising stock market, that mattered a lot more when workers got pensions, when good jobs were plentiful, and when more people could put away some money for the future. A rising GDP, that mattered a lot more when economic growth was shared more widely, when you saw more of it flow through Detroit. Now it just goes to the super rich. Rising unemployment, that mattered a lot more when a minimum wage job meant making enough to support a family. Rising home prices, that mattered a lot more before millions of families lost their homes and their savings when Wall Street blew up our economy. And it mattered a lot more before African American families were targeted with exploding mortgages. And the national average, that's just a cruel joke to the people of Flint who are stuck in homes where the water is poisoning their children. Yes, there are some great economic numbers, but the truth is that working families are holding on by their fingernails. Poverty is swallowing up cities and small towns alike. Infrastructure is crumbling, and good union jobs are drying up. Yes, the system is rigged. It is rigged for the rich and rigged against everyone else. And that's why we're here to fight back. That's why we're here. And here's one more truth. When a system is rigged this badly, communities of color are often hit the hardest. And that's if communities of color are given the opportunity to play it all. Yeah, when they say it isn't about race, it's about race. There's no sugarcoating it. Systemic racism has restricted opportunity in America, period. And if we can't say that plain and clear, then we can never change it. So are you ready to dish up a little plain talk? Are you ready? Are you ready for that? Let's have some plain talk. All right. We know what's going on when discrimination in housing, employment, and schools has created a steady, ugly wealth gap between white and black Americans. We know what is going on when voting rights are gutted by a right-wing Supreme Court and voter suppression laws are rammed through state legislatures. And we know exactly what is going on in Flint, Michigan, when children and families can't drink a glass of tap water while right-wing politicians just turn their backs. Black men and women, Tamir Rice, Rekia Boyd, Laquan McDonald, Natasha McKenna, Michael Brown, Freddie Gray, Eric Garner, Yvette Smith, Alton Sterling, Sharice Francis, Philandro Castile have died at the hands of those sworn to protect them. We remember their stories. We say their names. We grieve with their families. And we honor their memories with this vow. We shall not forget. I know that I have not personally experienced the fear, the oppression, the pain that confronts African Americans every day. I can't claim to feel it the same way, but none of us can ignore what is happening in this country. Not when our black and brown friends and family and neighbors literally fear dying in the streets. Not when the doors of opportunity are firmly closed in people's faces. Prejudice and bigotry and oppression are real, and no amount of fake news, alternative facts, and delusional press conferences will change that. Only when we face what is wicked can we commit ourselves to righteousness. And that brings me to our Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. Now, I guess I should think twice before I say anything about him. The last time I gave a speech about Jeff Sessions, I was told I was out of order, gavelled down, and thrown off the floor of the United States Senate. Yeah, I was warned. I was given an explanation, and nevertheless, I persisted. You know, it really was the most remarkable thing. As many of you know, I was reading a letter from Coretta Scott King back in the 1980s when Jeff Sessions had been nominated to the federal bench. Mrs. King had opposed Mr. Sessions because she had already seen him in action as the U.S. Attorney for Alabama. When he had power in Alabama, how did Jeff Sessions use it? I'll tell you. He prosecuted civil rights workers for helping elderly black citizens to vote. Let me just say that again. He prosecuted civil rights workers for helping elderly black citizens to vote. Now, Mrs. King was a witness to the prosecution that Jeff Sessions led, and she spoke of black families visited repeatedly by the FBI, about people pressured to change their testimony, about elderly black men and women herded onto buses and driven 180 miles to appear before a grand jury. She talked about the fear and the toll it took on people. And she declared that Jeff Sessions had used the awesome power of his office to chill the free exercise of the vote by black citizens. And when I stood on the floor of the Senate and read those words, that Sessions had used the awesome power of his office to chill the free exercise of the vote by black citizens, I was thrown out. And it wasn't just my voice that was silenced. No, it was Coretta Scott King who was silenced. And why was she silenced? Not because what she said was untrue. Not because her words were inflammatory. No, her voice was silenced because Coretta Scott King spoke the truth. In 1986, she spoke truth to power. And in 2017, the U.S. Senate used its power to stop the truth. I don't care if we have to film videos on Facebook or shout from the top of the Lincoln Memorial. We will not allow her voice and the voices of millions of other Americans to go unheard in the United States. Not now, not ever. That whole episode is also a reminder that President Trump isn't advancing hatred and prejudice all on his own. He has a lot of help. Yeah, and we can't forget that. You know, when Mitch McConnell refused to let me read Mrs. King's words, I demanded a recorded vote from the Senate before they could throw me out. I don't go out easy. And every single Republican in the Senate chamber that night voted to censure me, to shut me up when I tried to read Coretta Scott King's words. So remember this. President Trump and the Republicans, all of them, decided to put Jeff Sessions in the Justice Department. And on the Senate floor, the Republicans, every single one of them, wouldn't even let us talk about why that was so wrong. We will remember this today, tomorrow, and on Election Day. So now Jeff Sessions runs the Justice Department, and every day he makes changes. Voting laws in Texas, private pensions, prisons, rolling back investigations of police departments that commit civil rights violations. He changes the world we live in. Jeff Sessions is on a mission to turn back the clock 157 years. Well, we need to be on a mission too, a mission to stop him now. President Trump has stirred up some deep ugliness in the United States, and he and his fellow Republicans in Congress are serving up divisions and hatred across our country. Those Republicans were right there with him, and they tried to silence us. But we will not be silent. We will not be silent when the 1% gets pampered and everyone else gets pushed aside. We will not be silent when black men and women all across this country fear for their lives, for the people who are supposed to protect them. We will not be silent when the White House wants to spend billions of dollars building a wall on a border that won't work, but refuses to spend a dime in Detroit on providing economic opportunity for thousands of people desperate for work. We will not be silent. Long before Thurgood Marshall took his seat on the Supreme Court, long before he won his landmark case ending separate but equal in this country, he was a young civil rights lawyer fighting for justice. Thurgood Marshall would travel the South from hostile town to hostile town, challenging segregationist policies. That work was extraordinarily dangerous. Often, he barely escaped the fury that was kicked up in these towns. In 1946, he was nearly lynched in Tennessee. Why? Why did people like Thurgood Marshall and so many others risk everything, sacrifice everything, even their lives, for this cause. We know why they did it. They did it because they believed that a child born here in Detroit or anywhere else in America should have a real chance in life, no matter the wealth of her parents or the color of her skin. That fight is a righteous fight. She should be able to go to school where the classrooms aren't crumbling, where good teachers help her develop her God-given potential, and she should be able to see a good doctor when she's sick. That fight is a righteous fight. She should be able to get a job in an economy that works for everyone, not just for those at the top. That fight is a righteous fight. And she should grow up in a democracy that celebrates her right to vote. That right is a righteous fight. She should be able to build a future for herself without the shadow of mass incarceration hanging over her head, a shadow that shatters families and destroys communities. That fight is a righteous fight. No matter where she is, Flint, Michigan, or anywhere else in this country, she should be able to drink the water and breathe the air without getting poisoned. That fight is a righteous fight. She shouldn't fear violence when she walks down the street. She should know that Black lives matter and diversity makes our country strong. That fight is a righteous fight. This is what we believe. We believe in respect and dignity, not just for some, respect and dignity for all. We believe in economic opportunity for all. And like Dr. King, like Thurgood Marshall, like all of those who have come before, we will not be silenced. We will fight the righteous fight. We will fight the righteous fight. And we will not just persist, we will overcome. That's what we will do. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.